What's the story, ladies and gents? Hope we're keeping ourselves well. Welcome back to episode 7 of Walk the Walk. Taking a slightly different approach at this one. As you can see, we're outside rather than the kitchen or an FLF. And myself and Jay kind of had a conversation about kind of what we can do for this video. And I think just given the kind of proximity to the show that I'm in, given the kind of the reflections that we've had, I kind of want to center this one kind of around my story, I suppose. Kind of where I came from, how I ended up here. And just kind of giving an outline as to kind of, how the journey has been over the past, decade, I suppose. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk to you every year of my life for the next, hour and a half, but I think a little synopsis about kind of, what it's been like to get to this point is, it's an honest reflection of kind of, where I am now. And it's kind of an honest reflection of, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and I suppose the basis for, being in this game. And I like to tell my story at times. Not that I think it's anything special, but I think a lot of the time, we're in an industry where, it's quite short-sighted, or it's quite social media orientated. So you only ever really see the person from a visual perspective. You don't really get to know the individual. And I suppose for me, going forward, I want to be open. I want to be, considerate to the fact that people want to know people, and knowing and understanding an individual is a really, really cool way to, invest in them, I suppose. Not like from a financial perspective, but just in, a general sense. So I think without further ado, let's do it. I guess it's probably worth going back to the very start, I suppose, and just kind of reintroducing myself and kind of just allowing people to get a bit of an understanding of kind of who I am, where I came from, and the journey it took to get here. Because I think a lot of the time, a lot of our exposure to coaches and athletes and personalities, it's all through the kind of limited veil of social media, where everything can either be picture perfect, or at least a full story isn't being told. And kind of through my experiences growing up and through some quote unquote difficulties, I suppose, I've always been somebody who said to myself that I want to use my own experiences, my own difficulties and my own life experiences to, just create tangible conversations, around how people get to where they are and how it's not always a straight road. Because I've definitely, like I said, had a bit of a tumultuous career and a bit of a tumultuous life, I suppose. But again, it's not about being sympathetic or, trying to throw a pity party, really. It's more so about just getting to understand an individual, and kind of where they come from and kind of what goes into kind of quote unquote becoming who you are, I suppose. So from the beginning, my name is Ross Byrne. I am a 27-year-old physique coach and educator and an athlete. I come from a town called Stepaside, which is nestled in the foothills of the Dublin Mountains. It's a beautiful place full of beautiful people, full of greenery and mountains, and your kind of traditional Irish look, if you will. You picture the kind of normal Irish town, the normal Irish people, the top of the morning to you, I suppose. You'll find that in Stepaside. I started coaching off the back of a kind of 12-year stint as a national martial artist. I spent a long time fighting for the national team, winning at a national, competing at a European level. But when I was about 19, the love for it kind of started to fade out due to some politics, and I think kind of just maturing as I got older, I realised that it's probably not where I wanted to be long term. I originally had thought I would see myself in that space for a long time, trying to work towards the Olympic team. A lot of the people who I trained with who stayed on actually would go and represent Ireland at the Olympics this year. So eventually I was coaching people, or I was kind of coaching children and kind of coaching fitness elements and stuff within the martial arts space. That's kind of where my first introduction to kind of coaching and teaching kind of came in. Now, it was never really my long-term career path, to be honest with you. When I was in the kind of latter end of my school years, which aligns quite well up with when I decided to drop martial arts in the first place, I actually wanted to be an English teacher. And I'd, been relatively decent in school. I had my issues growing up, met some mental blocks, if you will, and that kind of led me down the garden path of, struggling in school with kind of concentration, and struggling in school with my ability to adhere, and struggling to manage my emotions as a kind of, a teenager and a late teen. But I was always pretty dead set on moving towards the teaching space, because I always knew I wanted to help people, or at least I thought I wanted to teach people. Now, kind of the equivalent of your A levels back home in Ireland is called your leaving cert, and kind of towards that point in time, I had a pretty unexpected event pick up that kind of changed the course of my life completely, to be honest. At least at the time, it wasn't so much my life completely, but it changed the direction I was going at that time, and that shift in direction would push me down into the fitness industry. So basically off the back of that, you know, my exams didn't go the way I wanted them to. I wasn't really in the headspace to kind of give them everything that I needed. So I ended up going and studying personal training because I was already kind of into fitness. I'd been into training. I've been kind of coaching people within the martial arts space. But a couple of weeks into the course and a couple of weeks into studying it, I quickly realised that this is where I wanted to do, and this is where I wanted to be, and this is where I wanted to put my attention. Now, I quickly also became quite discontent with the way the personal training was taught. I had been starting to do my own study and my own learning. I really dived into the education because I was just so interested in it. It just began to fascinate me more and more. The human body began to fascinate me more and more, to the point where they wouldn't let me come back for my second year of the personal training course. So I kind of had to go and find the qualification elsewhere. But that eventually, of course, led me onto the gym floor. And once I got on the gym floor for the first time, that was it. It was game over, and that was exactly what I wanted to do. That was where it was, and that's where my passions were. And I gave it as much as I possibly could for as long as I possibly could. I was working, 15, 16 hour days at basically minimum wage. I didn't really understand what a personal trainer is supposed to make. I knew what they were supposed to do, and I got quite good at personal training quite quickly. Clients really appreciated it. I really appreciated the work, and obviously the experience of dealing with more and more people, more and more different demographics. That would eventually get to the point where I decided to kind of go out on my own. And it was kind of at that point where it got a little bit more difficult, in the sense that I always struggled to really start to make my way and make money, quite frankly. And I always knew, or at least at that point in time, from that moment on, I knew that this is where I wanted to be and this is what I wanted to do. And I just continued to be as persistent as I could with it. And continued with, oftentimes very little return. And when I did get a return, I'd reinvest back into education. I was doing courses, Paula Quinn, PICP, Ben Bakulski's courses, you name it, I've probably done it. And that would continue to kind of be the basis of my development over the course of a couple of years. Much to the worry, I suppose, and the disgruntlement of my family, who, were noticeably worried about the fact that I wasn't really doing too much from a developmental perspective in a finance sense. And I just always knew that it was what I wanted to do. Now at the time, and kind of throughout my life, and I guess you could say kind of continually now, maybe not so much now, I battled a lot of mental demons. I was diagnosed with clinical depression when I was quite young, and that would battle me for a long time as I grew up, and that would be something that would often limit my ability to, just kind of function normally. I had a pretty significant disdain for myself, unfortunately, and that's kind of how depressive symptoms manifest themselves in a lot of people. And that would chase me, and that would haunt me for a long time as I grew up. And it was kind of through persistence in my career and persistence in doing what I loved that would slowly become easier to manage. I always knew, and I always held on to the idea that if I continued to work hard, it would pay off eventually. And that's what I did. I continued to work hard. I continued to give everything to it. And yeah, sometimes the kickback from a financial perspective was somewhat limited. I probably grossly under-exaggerating there. I went through stages where even a couple of years ago when I met Grace, tickles me a little bit to talk about this. I couldn't afford to bring Grace on holiday. I would borrow money from my ma to go and just go do social things with Grace, bring her on dates. When I met Grace, I actually slept on the floor. I slept on the floor in my bedroom. It's only when I look back now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't fucking living on the poverty line. My family weren't fucking, begging in the street around. But sometimes things just weren't there that I didn't realise weren't there. And again, it sounds terrible. My man's gonna be watching this going thinking that I'm talking that we're hobos. But there was just kind of elements within my life that were, not as clear cut. And, I can kind of fondly remember telling Grace at one stage a couple of years ago when she wanted to go away, that I just couldn't do it, I couldn't afford it. And, I was ready to get myself clothes, I drove a banged up car. My auntie bought me my first car. She actually bought me my second car as well after I wrote off. I didn't actually write it off. I can't remember what I did. I think I just rallied it into the ground, to be honest with you, because I wasn't a very good driver. To this day I don't have a full licence. I think I know why. And you know, I look back on it now, and I look back on all those times, and you know, I realise that they're kind of character building, you know, and you know, what I have now and what I had then are so different from an emotional perspective, from a physical perspective, financial perspective. You know, pretty much everything is so different now. But eventually, going back to the story, so I continued to kind of, you know, bully my way through personal training, and eventually get into online coaching a couple of years ago. It kind of started to take off, and I was like, right, it's time for me to start doing this. So, you know, I would chase online coaching for a long time and kind of slowly taper away from personal training. And don't get me wrong, it was never massively successful, but through using social media, people started to see what I was saying in terms of education and in terms of, you know, development and stuff like that, because I continued to reinvest what I did have into education. That was one thing I always held really, really close, was that whatever you have, put it back in. And so I would. Anytime it was my birthday, I'd ask for flights to go to courses. Anytime for Christmas, I'd ask for tickets to go to seminars. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I knew would get me to places. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the odd t-shirt and a pair of runners here and there. And if somebody got them for me, I was always happy. So eventually lockdown hit, and this was just after I'd gone on a trip to Asia, and I got quite unwell. Again, I'm not going to try to throw a pity party, but I was quite unwell for a long time, for about a year, and I couldn't really train. I couldn't really do much. It manifested itself in like physical lesions all over my skin. It was basically an immunosuppressive issue, to put it short, but it threw me into a bit of a hole emotionally, where a lot of the issues that I grew up with kind of relayed back into my life again. I really struggled to leave the house. I really struggled to get out of bed. You know, to be honest, I really struggled to just kind of get through every day, if I'm honest with you. Because again, I told myself I'd be open and transparent here. I really struggled. I remember sitting with my ma and crying and telling her I can't do it anymore. You know, and it was up there with the hardest periods of time of my life, because, you know, off the back of not being able to train, off the back of COVID, off the back of not really being able to work, I kind of lost everything. I didn't really have any clients, and nobody really had much. So the people who I was coaching, I was kind of coaching for nothing. And then when I was coaching them, you know, it was quite half-assed. I couldn't really train. You know, my diet went to shit. Everything kind of went to shit, like everyone else's did. And then 2020, I believe, eventually Grace, who had already started working with Callum, said, why don't you use what it was the COVID fund. I think you guys call it furlough in the UK. So why don't you just reinvest your COVID payment into coaching? And I was so hesitant at the time. It was May, just before my birthday. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I built the gym in my bedroom. Anyone who goes back on my Instagram, or you might even throw a picture up or something like that of me training in the bedroom. I built the gym in the bedroom. I built a squat rack in the bedroom. I put kind of everything together. And from that moment onwards, that kind of lease on life and career and everything else kind of started to come back again. Cal was actually mentoring me at the time, so I went for the mentorship, where he kind of teaches you each week as well. And we became obviously quite personal, good friends, and he encouraged me to run a seminar. So eventually the gym's opened back up for a very short amount of time. I began to plan this seminar, which is called Muscle for the Masses. And over the course of the lockdown and the COVID issues, it was cancelled 3 or 4 times. Over and over again, I had to cancel it, sell the tickets, resell the tickets, refund the tickets, go back again. And then eventually in September of, would it have been 2021, 2020? It was 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2020. Eventually, I'd be able to put it on. And funny enough, there's a good story here. So it was due to be on the Saturday and the Sunday in a gym called Southside Strength and Fitness, which is the gym that I ended up calling my kind of base gym towards the latter point of my career back in Dublin before I moved over. And Barry, who owns that gym, has given me so many opportunities. When I was unwell and I came back from Thailand, obviously I had no real money, I had no real ability to do anything from a kind of rent perspective to pay to work out at the gym. Barry actually allowed me to work in the gym without paying my rent until I was on my feet enough again. He allowed me to use the gym with no charge for the seminar. So I'll never forget Barry for that. I really, really won't, and I owe him a lot. It's one of the reasons why my personal Cybex hack squat sits on the gym floor in Southside Strength and Fitness right now. And eventually that seminar went on, and at that time I'd been consulting with Mr. Luke Hoffman, who was a muscle mentor at the time, and obviously Cal, who was coaching me at the time, and they helped me put together this seminar, which I wanted to be a singular spot for coaches to come and learn the elemental pieces of information that would allow them to be a high-level coach in every facet. And it was female physiology, training, anatomy, biomechanics, you name it. I had a section on it, hence why it was over 2 days. So that went off incredibly well. Now it nearly didn't happen at all again, because the night before the seminar there was actually another bout of restrictions announced. So I had to go down and take it from outside, or take it from inside, build marquees, get chairs, and actually put it on outside in the AstroTurf. But eventually it all went well, everything cropped up. It ended up being a really, really powerful weekend where I realised that the impact that I was having was being felt, and the people who were in kind of the circle in Dublin were willing to listen to me. And then about a week later, Carl asked me to do my check-in. We have a check-in call every week, and he asked me would I do check-in on Wednesday. Now we usually do a check-in on a Saturday, but anyway, I didn't think anything of it. I thought he was just busy. And 6 p.m. on Wednesday, and I went home, and I remember I was driving home with Grace from the gym, and she said to me, "What would you do if you had a job with the Muscle Mentors?" And I said to her, I looked her dead in the eye, I go, "Grace, you're absolutely stupid to think that I'd ever get a job with the Muscle Mentors. Maybe in a couple of years' time when I've proved myself, you know, I might see what story is, and you never know what might happen." I went home, and 2 hours later, I jumped on a call with Cal and Luke, and they asked me to join the Muscle Mentors. I cried like a baby. Like in front of the two of them, I was wearing like blue Turtle Beach headphones, because at that stage I was fucking betting to PlayStation, and I couldn't stop myself shaking, and I couldn't stop myself feeling this well and this like this overbearing sense of relief, and I cried like a baby in front of the two of them. And from that moment onwards, my whole life changed. Cal would eventually encourage me to move, and I moved to Manchester about a year and a half ago, after being with the team since the January. I was officially announced. I was asked to join in September, so it took a couple of months to get sorted. And that was it, man. That was it. Everything from that moment changed. I was given an opportunity that not many people are given, and anyone who knows and who's coaching and who's involved within the fitness industry, they know who the Muscle Mentors were. They know who Callum was. Everyone knows them as the guys who set up, and the guys who set the tone for what coaching is supposed to be. And they asked me to come and work for them. I packed up my shit with Grace. I dropped every penny I had on my apartment for 6 months because I was self-employed. They wouldn't let me pay monthly. Dropped every fucking penny I had in an apartment down the road for the first 6 months, and I left myself with nothing. I told myself, right, you're here now, you better make it work. And it worked. Fast forward a year and a half later, and I'm probably in the best position I've ever been. In fact, I am in the best position I've ever been. I've got a full roster of athletes. My name is starting to be a little bit more recognised around the industry, where, if you're Irish and you're a coach, people don't give a fuck who you are, they don't know who you are. And things are starting to move in a direction for me that I never thought they would. I feel incredibly lucky, and I feel incredibly blessed to have met the people who I have, and for the opportunity that Cal's given me, and that the team have given me, and Luke Hoffman obviously gave me as well. But like when I sit back and I think to myself, where this all came from, it just feels like one of those things that just doesn't really happen to people. You meet people who have these moments, and you meet people who have these experiences, and you're like, that could never happen to me. And for me, that was that moment. That was that period of time. The past year and a half or so has been I don't know what the word is, man, to be honest with you. It's been incredible, to be honest. You know, don't get me wrong, there's still been, you know, issues and problems and differences and house moves and, you know, other kind of elements that have come into play. But all in all, I'm in a situation now where after, you know, over a decade of putting the head down and, you know, kind of 8 years or so of that not really coming of much, and, you know, many times I found myself on jobs.ie looking for office jobs. I fondly remember applying for jobs that were like kind of fitnessy. Like I tried to apply for like a secretary's job in Fitbit, which had like an office in Dublin, and just anything I could do to kind of just keep myself in that space I was trying to do. But I remember texting Grace and sending her CVs, going, will I apply for this, will I apply for that, lying on the floor in my bedroom and thinking, like, I just don't think I can do it anymore. I don't think I can, you know, continue to kind of scrape the barrel and then put across this image that I'm educated and that I'm successful. Because again, from social media, for people looking back then, you know, you would think that the return was coming, but it just wasn't, you know. And I'm not saying that education isn't worth chasing. Every single coach should chase education with everything they have. If I wasn't as educated as I was at that time, none of this would have happened. It just took a long while for it to be realised by the right people.
He wouldn't have pictured himself here now, that Ross, when I met him in 2016. So we're together 6 years now, and, you know, he was a personal trainer and he introduced me to the gym and I idolised him. But we had no idea where his career path was going to go, I guess. There's a lot of bumps in the road, a lot of doubts as to whether he could continue, I suppose, with personal training, with coaching, and even his own bodybuilding endeavours. You know, he got sick plenty of times. You know, he had his own self-doubt about if he was even a good bodybuilder, only up until recently. So it's been, you know, 6 years of kind of up and down. And I remember sitting in my house and we were both getting really upset together, wondering if Ross could even continue with the personal training, and he was looking at numerous jobs online. My mum was encouraging him to go back to college, and that was about 2018, and he was going to throw in the towel. But passion always lied with Ross. And that's something I admire him so much for, is passion was always there. The financial gain wasn't always there, you know, and he didn't always get the return with his physique, with the amount of work he was putting in a lot of the time. But he just kept going because it was all passion. And I don't think anybody deserves to be where they are now as much as he does, because the amount of work that he has put in when he didn't get anything back. And not many people would be could do that, you know. I've had struggles where I just wanted to throw in the towel, and I even gave up personal training in 2018 as well. But he always had the mindset of just keep going, and eventually it will come back, and absolutely has tenfold. So yeah, he it is emotional kind of looking at where he is now, because I don't think he always like reflects on it that much. You know, his family always admire where he is now, but I don't think he reflects much where he is now, and I'm sure this video he did, and that's probably why he got emotional. But it's an amazing story, and anybody that Ross speaks to and tells the story to is inspired by it as well, and it inspires me every single day to keep going with my business when I have a lot of doubts, because I see where he's come from, and he really has kind of came from nothing, do you know, that kind of way. And even the financial side of things, he didn't have the money other people did to invest in business mentors, all that kind of thing. It was purely just passion. So yeah, he's inspired me a lot, and that's it really.
Here we are now on the 7th of July. I'm currently working with a full roster of athletes, team pro coach as lead prep coach. I have educational events organised all around the world over the course of the next couple of months. I'm 9 days out from my first bodybuilding show as an actual bodybuilding athlete. It's not my first prep, it's my first bodybuilding show. My mentor and one of my best friends is Callum Raystrick. My training partners are 2 professional bodybuilders in Jay McGee and my brother Oscar Young. I work for a team of some of the best coaches in the UK and one of the most recognised brands arguably in the world. I've got an incredible videographer who produces content for me that's allowed me to produce a following and to produce content that people want to look at and want to listen to, and allows me to do things like this, which honestly I'm a little bit nervous doing right now, for sure. You know, I'm being open, I'm being honest, and I'm pretty sure I nearly cried a couple of times while I'm doing this. And it just feels right. You know, I live in a beautiful area of the city of Manchester. I live in a lovely house. I have the most gorgeous dog. I have the most gorgeous girlfriend, the most incredibly supportive girlfriend, who I've been difficult to be around for the past couple of weeks for sure, being 9 days out, eating nothing but veg, basically. And if you're watching this, Grace, I'm sorry, but I've got about 7 or 8 more days of that to go. But I've got an incredible girlfriend who I'll take away on holiday, hopefully marry and have beautiful children with at some point. And it just all feels right, man. You know, it just feels like things are the way they're supposed to be now. And it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling. And also, you know, I appreciate all of you guys watching this. You know, Walk the Walk has been a really cool experience for me as well. You know, I've been able to speak about this kind of journey that I've been gone on, that started off, if you remember, as being, you know, the coach first, athlete second. You know, and it's allowed me to find Ross the athlete, and it's also allowed me to, to reflect on Ross the human. You know, it's like, it's cool just how, like, you know, the medium of video and the medium of content and the kind of just like whatever way you want to refer to this as, like, has allowed me to, you know, document what has been the most kind of, you know, transitional period of my life, kind of by accident. You know, and that's a really, really cool thing. So I do hope you just enjoyed listening to that. And as far as I'm concerned, this is only really the beginning for me, and for Pro Coach, and for my family, and for my boys, for Jay, for my team, for my circle. This is all just the beginning. And in 9 days' time, I'm going to scratch the surface of what's going to come over the course of the next few years. You know, what started off as the culmination of work is now becoming the start of more work. What was originally the culmination of this process is now actually the start of another. And that's a really, really cool thing. But again, I never thought it would happen. I never thought I'd have the vindication to say the things that I say that I'm going to do. I never thought I would have the ability to have the contacts and the friends and, you know, the people around me that I do, like people who I watched on social media for years. You know, I sat down and had a coffee with Joe Ballinger last week in Spain. And I used to follow Joe years ago. You know, it was like, this is such a peculiar situation. The same with Oscar. You know, I followed Oscar for years. Oscar is now literally my brother. You know, Oscar looks out for me every single day. And like, it's just very surreal. And, you know, I think sometimes, especially on a prep, you kind of forget where you are. And you kind of forget to appreciate where you are. And maybe that's why I got a bit more emotional, because this video's forcing me to reflect a little bit. And, you know, I think to wrap it up and not go on for too much longer, if I could say one thing to give you guys a little bit of value beyond the story, it's to just keep going. If you really want to do something, and you know that it's that thing, you know you've found that thing, just keep going. It will, if you continue to work hard and you continue to give it everything you have, it'll pay off. It'll pay off faster than it did for me. You guys have access to some of the most educated and, you know, advanced level people on earth, which I didn't have when I started. There's so many opportunities out there for you to learn, to grow, to get into the circle and get into the faces of some of the best in the world, or whatever it is that you want to do. Business, coaching, you know, videography, fucking dog breeding, whatever it is. The resources are there. You have to chase it down. And if you really, really want something, if you really want to go for something, and you have this vision for what you want to do in the future, just keep working for it. It seems cliche, but just don't give up. I'm glad I didn't. Right, that's it.
Tired now? Stay up.
Never done that before. They just started from the start.
That's when you realise what you're doing. You say, oh,